Hi everyone, I'm number one Marmaduke fan, and I click on Sargon of Akkad Daily YouTube clickbait when I see it. But Sargon had an interesting video where he took the fascism test, and I'm just kind of fascinated by this. So I'm just going to take it. I'm not going to try to guess whether the question is trying to present a fascist view or not. I'm just genuinely curious to see how I line up. So this is from IDR Labs. Let's read the copy so we kind of understand what they're how they define fascist. As the American legal scholar David S. D'Amato has pointed out, much of the meaning contained in the word fascism has been lost in its constant and lazy employment as a general term of abuse. Though fascism and fascist have long been pejorative catchwords employed by both right and left in their denouncement of anything they do not like, fascism is in fact no catch-all, but a definite political ideology situated at a complex crossroads between socialism, conservatism, and liberalism. By adopting elements from each of these political philosophies as its own, while simultaneously denouncing others, fascism manages to strike out as a fourth way of doing politics and a definite system of government. Does your political outlook share any of fascism's doctrines? Let's find out. And I'll explain why I choose what I choose. The individual is more important than the state. I agree 100% with that one. The mode of organization employed by the military is an efficient one, and institutions like schools, the police, and firefighters could generally benefit from adopting more of the military's practices and discipline. So I'm not going to overthink this too much because apparently they're pulling their sources from Italian fascists, and the question is, well, would you agree with this in 1930, or would you... I'm just going to say whether I agree with this now. So the American military is pretty efficient, but as a government in a system, I'd kind of call it a necessary evil, where I like the American military. I think they're good at their job, but they're subject to some of the similar efficiencies that any other aspect of government would be. And definitely when it comes to schooling, like I say, homeschool your kids. So I'm going to say like a qualified disagree, where I kind of prefer private or personal or individual family approaches to things like educating your kids. Now, the police, it's good for them to have some training so they know how to shoot. Firefighters, maybe it's good for them to have kind of like that band of brothers mentality before they bust into a firehouse. So that's why I'm not going to say strongly agree, but I'd still say I prefer kind of like the more local approach to solving problems than a overarching approach. A plurality of political parties is necessary to ensure that no one circle of individuals gets too complacent in power. So maybe this is a funny thing for me in the States because I'm used to just having two parties. I know like systems like Britain, you could have multiple parties competing with one another. I guess it'd be good to have as much competition as possible to prevent any one group from getting too much power. So I don't know if it's necessary. Like we have two parties in the States, but we have separation of powers within our constitutions. I'll say slightly agree. Organizations like the Freemasons and similar secret lodges cannot be trusted since they have their own agendas. Ooh. Well, I don't know much about their agendas, so I kind of can't really say one way or the other. Well, since I don't know anything about them, I guess I don't know whether to trust them or not. So, the struggle between rich and poor, between capital owners and laborers, is a more significant driver of history than the struggle between nations. I disagree 100%. I think the struggle between nations is a lot more important than the struggle between rich and poor, because you often would perceive your king, who was kind of your fief lord, as your protector from the hordes of invading barbarians. People shouldn't be allowed to spread dangerous political beliefs or ridicule those with whom they disagree without permission from the proper authorities. I just wish I could go all the way over here on... Wait, they've got some double negatives here, so I've got to double check that. People shouldn't be allowed, so that means I disagree. They should be allowed to spread whatever their beliefs are. Ethics is a matter of statecraft. Whatever furthers the interest of the state is good, whatever inhibits it, bad. No, ethics are objective and they come from God. So the individual cannot really claim any rights against the state, since it is the state that grants him these rights in the first place. No, rights are inalienably endowed by our Creator. All people are essentially worth the same, no matter their race, gender, nationality, or IQ, created in the image of God. I agree. The political challenges of today are so serious that they can no longer be solved with the traditional paradigms of political thought. I'd say I softly agree. Like, I see people, they say, oh, horseshoe theory, oh, we need a new method of it. And I think that left and right is still a helpful way of thinking about these issues. It's just a simplified way. So the problem with saying left and right is it oversimplifies things, but sometimes it's good to have simple explanations for that. I'll say agree because I do think it helps for you to like step out of the left versus white. What? Man, that's going to get taken out of context. Left versus right. Freudian slip there, left versus white. Yeah, I think it is good to step out of the left versus right box and maybe look at a different perspective. So I'll say slightly agree. If a people hasn't accomplished much throughout the course of its history, that tells you something about the worth of people. It's like that great line about how the Swiss only came up with the clock and the Germans kept getting stomped in wars and they'd invent all of this great engineering and stuff. So what is worth of the people? Does that mean like worth as an intrinsic worth, their worth as human beings, or does that mean worth as in like economic worth? Like how much do these people actually contribute to the world economy and the world of ideas? It doesn't qualify it, so I have no idea on what metric to judge that. The thing is, though, if your country contributes more like inventions and economic value to the world in terms of just pure economic worth, you are contributing something more of value. So I'll say slightly agree because I don't know what they mean by worth. Classical liberalism is essentially an ideology of the past, and modern attempts to reinstate it, aka neoliberalism, are bound to lead to wars. So is classical liberalism an ideology of the past? I respect classical liberalism. I think that a lot of classical liberal values are worth preserving. I don't call myself a classical liberal because that means I'm attaching my ship to an older ideology, like it emerged in the early 1900s, right? So I just don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Will reinstating it lead to wars? I don't see any necessary connection between that. I think neoliberalism tends to be kind of like Hillary Clinton was called a neoliberal because she was a Democrat who believed in capitalism. So I kind of look at that as a weasel word where it's just a way of attacking someone. I don't think that being a classical liberal or advocating for classically liberal ideas necessarily leads to wars. If a state is to protect the freedom of its citizens in the long run, the state itself must be free to make controversial or unlawful decisions when necessary. I disagree. I think you have, in the states, we have the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive branch, and the judiciary can't enforce their decisions, but you need to have a system in place to the president isn't a king, so there needs to be a way to hold the president accountable if the president breaks the law. Going next, politically speaking, the state is a second order of consequence, the derived effect of a people laying claim to their homelands and flourishing there. Okay, so that means first the people lay claim to their homelands, they start having babies, they start building communities, and the state exists as a result of that because these people want the state to exist to defend them. That kind of makes sense, yeah. So it's basically saying the individual or the family or the people pre-exist the state. You have a state because you want to defend yourself against the invading hordes of barbarians. I think so, yeah, I'll softly agree. To view consumer goods and an increase in living standards as ends in themselves is a sign of moral corruption and decadence. All right, so this is like kids these days and their iPhones. We're back in the day when we didn't have iPhones, we were so much better. So consumer goods, I think they're tools. They can be used for good and evil. An increase in living standards, I think that promotes human flourishing. Now, it could be that because you're just living this rich lifestyle, you're spoiled, you don't have any like moral backbone because you don't understand what it takes to get that increase of living standard. But the increase in living standard itself, I think, is a good. So it could be that morally corrupt and decadent people could have a high living standard, but I don't think it's necessarily you're rich, your country is rich, therefore you're morally corrupt and decadent. So that means I disagree with this statement. I think I strongly Disagree. Yeah, I don't like the idea of attributing to rich people or to rich nations that they must be decadent. The free market is the most efficient way of organizing the economy known to man. Strongly agree. Hello? People who seek happiness through money and material comfort will never achieve it. Yeah, so if you're trying to find lasting happiness, you need more than just I have money in the bank. So I would softly agree. Like having money and material comfort, you can support your family with that. I think that's part of being a decent man, but that in and of itself isn't the source of happiness. Y'all need Jesus. The economic losses from worker strikes and employer lockouts are just too massive to allow market forces to sort these out by themselves. So should we basically break up worker strikes and employer lockouts from the state because worker strikes cost us too much money? I disagree. Let the workers and their bosses work it out. The politician of the state doesn't need to get in there. Politicians have a responsibility not to upset the traditional ways of communities that live according to their time-honored customs, values, and creeds. Yeah, get the politicians out of my life. A person who has nothing to hide has nothing to fear from government surveillance. No, get off of my property! There are no universal ethics. What is true and good for one people may be false and bad for another. Strongly disagree. There are universal, objective, moral values as defined in the mind of God. Right? Is that right? There are no universal ethics. I disagree. There are universal ethics. Running a business is not very hard. As a rule, the business owner doesn't possess any special skills that are not also possessed by his workers. No, it's a completely different skill set. I love big businessmen and their big, tremendous buildings. They're so huge and special. I love them. Warfare is the only state that truly shows you what a given people is made of. Ooh, okay. So I would say like America in World War II, that kind of shows what we're made of, right? Like I think that's a big point of pride for me is that, America kicked Germany's butt. So that's pretty cool. But is it the only state that shows you what a people are made of? Can you show what you're made of in a time of peace? Yeah, I think you can. So I'm gonna softly disagree. Like you don't have to go to war to prove that you're a good country. It's not logical or efficient to have several companies all making the same tire, the same wrench, the same cable, etc. So the state should step in to coordinate their efforts. No. When it comes down to it, politics is mostly about the distribution of money, materials, and resources. A people's values and religions are just icing on the cake. So what's odd about this is there's kind of like two parts of it. Like I think people's values and religion is actually much more important than politics, but is politics itself just about the redistribution of money, materials, and resources? It kind of feels like that's what politicians want politics to be. I don't like the idea that a people's values and religion are just icing on the cake. It sounds like this question is saying that material resources, kind of like materialism, is more important than religion and spirituality. I think religion and spirituality determine the culture, so I'm going to strongly disagree. Democracy is dangerous to competent statecraft because it forces every political decision to be lowered to a level of stupidity that the masses can understand. Well, I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Democratic Republican. I like having a republic where we use a democratic process to elect our representatives, but we're not just purely voting and it's a 51% vote. That said, I like having the people have a say as a check and balance on the elitist state political class. So I don't think democracy is dangerous. No, I'll softly disagree because I'm not big on pure democracy. The honor and worth of a people is proportional with the contributions it has made to global civilization. If a people has not contributed much, it is of little worth. So we're back to like, what does worth mean? The honor and worth of a people. Okay, that makes it sound like this is more talking about your intrinsic value as a human being. Your soul is of less value if you contribute less to world civilization. So since I say that all human life has intrinsic moral value created in the image of God, no, people are of worth. Actually, it's not the people who contribute stuff. It's the individuals. Like, you could say, oh, Einstein's Jewish and he contributed a lot to the field of physics. Yeah, but he did that as an individual. Like, why would you want to divvy it all up to which ethnicity or which nationality did what? It's the individual who earns honor by his or her contributions to the society. So I'll say strongly disagree. Last question. In the end, economic and technological strength cannot compete with the spiritual strength of a people that has faith in their country. So what I don't like about this is I love my country, but the language of faith in your country, to me, that's disproportionate. That's making the state or the country a object of religious worship, not just an object of affection, where I love my countrymen, but I don't worship my countrymen. Economic and technological strength, those are obviously like big important factors. A economic superpower could run over a tiny little nation with spears, right? So I'm actually going to say strongly disagree. Finish. I am 26% fascist, which makes me not fascist. While your political outlook may share a few, or even quite a few, of fascism's fundamental doctrines, it is overall safe to say that your political orientation is not a fascist one. Now, you may find this result unsurprising, but in reality, most people have at least some points of agreement with fascism, since fascism is really a mix of communism, socialism, conservatism, and liberalism. I wish they'd have like some citations for some of this. Like, it'd be nice to see a citation to a quote from Mussolini or something where they got the question from. And this feels a little bit like editorial copy. Like, don't give me your editorial copy. Give me like the citations where I can go read like all the fascist scholars to figure it out for myself, with a few innovations of its own throw in. Hence, adjusting for these factors, even though your fascism percentage might seem quite high, there's really nothing surprising about these agreements when viewed in their proper historical context. So rest assured, your political beliefs are definitely not fascist. Leave me alone, Antifa! I only got a 26% score on the Are You a Fascist test. All right, it's the fascism test from IDR Labs. Let me know what percentage you get in the comments below. I am truly yours, #1 anti-fascist fan. Love you guys. Catch you later.